All right, so today we're going to be live with Jessa Jones. Jessa Jones is the woman who owns iPad Rehab, who had her iPhone screen stolen by customs thanks to Apple. We're going to be going over this case. I'm going to be asking her a lot of questions. I'm going to be taking some of your questions. And also, if you are interested, you can check out the links below, which have full copies of all these documents in case you want to inspect any of these things for yourself. So with that, let's just get started. And Jessa, thank you for taking the time.
Hey, Louis, you are welcome. So we were just chatting here about the issue. So for those of you who haven't followed the story, I had a relatively small order of screens. These are standard Apple iPhone screens that I imported. One of the questions I've got a lot is, why'd you put Apple iPhone screens, you dummy? Well, I didn't. It didn't say, please inspect me, Apple iPhone screens. It said, electronic parts for repair or something like that. I bought these from a professional in China who knows a lot about screens, and she has sold many people in the industry screens for a long time. She knows what she's doing. And this is kind of a ongoing problem that has just now personally hit me, but it's happened to not just me, but lots and lots of people in the industry. That's what Louis and I were just talking about, the sort of breadth of this problem of customs just taking your stuff and throwing it in the trash can, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay, so just to be clear, you had imported iPhone screens and there was an Apple logo on the Flex, and that's why they were taken.
Yes. So I imported iPhone screens. Here's a kind of an example right here. I'm just sitting here at my home office. This is a tester screen that I use, but an Apple iPhone screen consists of a front. It's actually multiple layers. The top piece here is a piece of glass. Now, that's the part that typically breaks. So you can take the glass off. If you put this thing in a super cold freezer, get a playing card and just slice off the glass. Really fun to do, like butter, it'll come off. And then what's left behind is the expensive part, the LCD. So the LCD that actually makes the image is left behind. Plus, there's a little piece here called the backlight. And there's some other pieces. There's some optically clear adhesive. There's some polarizers, and they go together to make a nice sandwich called your iPhone screen. Now, one of the pieces of the iPhone screen is this thing called a flex. And you can see a teeny tiny little Apple logo. There's one right there, this size compared to my fingernail. It's smaller than a grain of rice. That Apple logo is there because it was put there by Apple. And that means that this piece of the screen was once a part of a bona fide Apple iPhone screen that then, once the glass broke, was made its way to China and was refurbished, meaning, I don't like that word refurbished. Refurbished means anything from, refurb, crap, to, like new. So it was, fixed. It was turned back into a screen. And whether or not that makes the screen indistinguishable from new or not depends on the skill of the person who did that refurbishing. And that's why, who's really good at that? The guys who make the screen to begin with, the guys in China. So we like to buy these screens from China because they are indistinguishable from the ones that you had on your phone originally. They got taken from me because the original Apple logo put there by Apple on that Apple LCD is still there. Of course it's still there because it was put there by Apple because this piece was authentic. The glass that's on top makes it a brand new screen. And it comes to me to go into somebody's phone, which is, I call being a good steward of the environment. And Custom said, hey, this is Apple, and Apple says you're not allowed to have screens. We got to take these from you and throw them away. And what you can use is, something else. Here's one that doesn't have the Apple logo. This is an aftermarket or a copy screen. These are okay, but they're just not as good. These, like you can even see how the backlight is attached. It's kind of attached in a way with a little yellow piece of tape that could come off. If it does, it'll short out backlight.
Yeah, I remember with the iPhone 5s, they would have that little piece, and if the piece came out, I'm going to mute you every time I turn on because I hear an echo. Anyway, so they're okay, muted. So there was that issue with the iPhone 5s with the knockoff screens where the backlight flex would have an exposed copper, so when you close the phone, it would blow the motherboard.
And just holding these two, This one, the aftermarket one's a shade thicker. You know, I can feel that difference. I'd rather have the one that is the refurbished original in my phone.
Yeah,
that's why I go get it for my customers, because I want them to have the best. These are like $22. These are like $60. I buy the $60 ones because they're the right choice for my customer. I would go to the Apple store and buy the legitimate one, but I'm not allowed to do that. So I get the next best thing, which is a refurbished, original LCD that of course still has the markings from its life in the original phone.
Okay, so now one of the criticisms that a lot of people have, and one of the criticisms that I can understand, is this screen that you're using, it has an Apple logo on it, and even if it is refurbished, how do they know that it's being refurbished to the same standards as Apple? And I can understand where somebody may have some sort of issue with there being a logo on the part if it was not refurbished to the same standards. So what would you say to the people that say, how dare you have a screen that has an Apple logo on it, even if it is a refurb, because it was not refurbished by Apple and bears the logo of a company that has high standards for their quality control?
Well, I think that those are kind of the valid points. One of the questions I saw was, well, then what should they confiscate? And honestly, I think when it comes to parts for repair, that is different than the entire device by itself. Because as it is, the entire device by itself, if I took my iPhone and I took out the battery in my iPhone and I swapped it in with a different battery, mailed it to China and said, hey, mail it back to me, that customs could confiscate my intact iPhone in the same manner because, hey, this is an iPhone, it's got an Apple logo on it, and look inside, it's got a piece inside here that was not originally from Apple. So we're going to send it to Apple and say, is that legit? And they're going to say, no, it's got some different battery in here. Throw that away. That's counterfeit. So I think that, when you kind of get down to the level of the part, I don't think that there is a good way for customs to be the policeman of that. If someone, I don't really think that customs can really get in the business of saying, which one of these do we confiscate and throw away? I think that the issue of how do we settle, what are you getting in your phone, which one of these, is really at the level of the consumer and the shop that they're doing business with. And for consumers to be aware that all screens are not the same, so that a consumer can make a choice. Do you want the aftermarket? Here's the price. Do you want the refurbished original? Here's the price. And ideally, do you want the bona fide pedigreed Apple part that has the Apple, quality control process and has their certification? Which one do you want? They all have a different price. Look and feel, look at the LCD, see what the touch is like. Consumers should be the ones that are deciding that, in my opinion.
Okay, now another criticism has been, well, you probably are getting in trouble because what you're doing is you're passing off this screen as an original one. That's why you want the screen with the Apple logo. Why would you want that screen with the Apple logo? Why would you import it with that logo? Why don't you ask them to cross it out? Isn't the reason that you're doing this just so that you can tell your customers that these screens came from Cupertino when they really didn't?
No, and I really don't think that anyone is in that practice. Consumers are smart enough to know that Apple doesn't sell screens and that there really is no such thing as a bona fide OEM screen. And in fact, if you're in the industry, you'll quickly learn that anyone that uses the phrase OEM, that is like synonymous with crappy, because OEM screens from Apple are not available and they really can't be, there's no source for those. So I think that, for us, we are always as above board as we can be. The reason why I get those screens in particular, the $60 ones instead of the $24 ones, is because in my professional opinion, that's what I want for my customers. That's what I want for my mom on Mother's Day. That's what I want for my kids' phones. That's the ones that I think as a professional are best for my customers. And I feel like that's my job, is to know about all of these different parts and to pick the one that I recommend. I'm the professional. That's kind of my job. So I pick the best one that we can get.
Yeah, and it's interesting where you said that it's difficult to know what the quality of the screen is, because at one point in time, I'm sure that my website, if I went to archive.org, said we use OEM screens, not Apple screens, but OEM ones, because the vendor selling it to me said this is OEM, and I was dumb enough to believe them, like most of us are.
Yeah, the phrasing, it really does sort of change over time. The words that we often use are it is not a pedigreed Apple screen, but it is indistinguishable in form and function to the original Apple screen.
Yeah, now with the Henrik Husby case, there was one seemingly intelligent criticizer on Reddit that said something like, if you look up his site on archive.org, he was advertising that he was using certified or authorized parts. When I went to his site, the translator, and perhaps the translator was getting something wrong with dialect, but with what I saw with Google Translate was that he was using the word original. So at what point do you think somebody should get in trouble for saying that we use original parts or original screens? Like, at what point is that considered kind of mean? Because I do see a lot of websites where they claim that they use original screens. That's a very common customer question. It was probably the top asked customer question up until everybody stopped caring about it maybe a year or two ago. Like 2010, 2009 through 2014, everybody asked, is this an original screen?
It's again kind of not the job of customs, I think, to try to answer that question. And part of the reason why I think people say, yes, this is an original screen when it's clearly not, is because they don't know any better. So I think the real heart of that issue is it's our job as professionals to educate consumers that all screens aren't the same. And one person who does a really good job of that is Brian out of Phone Love, and his shop, I think, is in Oregon. And what he does is he has customers come in and look at a display where he has taken a screen, dissected it into the 7 different layers, and put up this kind of like shadow box. And he has all 6 different phones where you can touch and feel and see this is aftermarket with XYZ touch technology. This is aftermarket with a different type of aftermarket LCD. This is an original LCD with copy flex and copy glass. This is an original refurbished one, like mine. And this is a full original taken from an original. Touch and feel them, see them, and then pick out which one you want us to put in your phone. I love that he does that. And I think that if we all taught consumers to evaluate what they're getting, that there would be more an awareness from the consumers, and then up at the franchise workers and the kids at the Genius Bar on down, there are not original screens that are available to the independent repair marketplace. At best they can get is an original refurbished screen, and then it goes down from there.
Okay, so now another thing that people don't get is they don't understand the demand for third-party repair, because they don't actually they think that you can just go to a store or that you could just get certified and that you could do this and that. The only reason you're doing this is because you want to save money, or because you want to skim off the top, or you want to swap parts out of the phone, or you want to change their home buttons with evil home buttons that are going to steal their bank information. Why don't you just get Apple Authorized if what you're looking to do is repair people's screens? Why don't you become you're clearly qualified. You're able to run a business. You have the money to invest in the certifications. You have the intelligence to pass any of their tests. If you want to repair Apple products and you want to do data recovery and screen repair, why not become an AASP?
Well, because all of those things are mutually exclusive. So I've looked into it for sure. What does it mean to become Apple Authorized? So I could apply to become Apple Authorized. First thing that I would have to do is jump through a bunch of these hoops that are part of the long arm of control. My parking lot would have to be XYZ distance from the front door. There would have to be X amount of front-facing glass. The decor of my store would have to meet certain standards. I would have to pay for and invest thousands in things that are generally considered irrelevant for iPhone repair. One thing that I would have to do if I did do a screen replacement as an Apple Authorized service provider, I would have to take and throw away all of the screws and shields in the phone, because I couldn't be trusted to put those screws back in the right place. And I'd have to open up a completely new one. So the level of mistrust for Apple Authorized repair is extraordinary, because it's institutionalized repair. There is no room for any kind of independent thinking. So the entire system, there's not that there's anything wrong with that. I think if you're trying to service millions of phones, that you have to be very standardized, and they're really good at that. But it's extremely institutionalized. I remember being flabbergasted that One of my students that was an Apple authorized service provider in another country told me that even he, as the Apple authorized business owner, did not have access to some of the information that his manager, that was his own employee, because the employee login as manager was different than the login as owner, and he did not have visibility on every thing going on in his own business. So the level of control is ridiculous. And that drills down to repairs. So as Apple authorized, I could do no data recovery whatsoever under any circumstance at all.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but when you say you cannot do data recovery under any circumstance, can you touch on why that is via the Apple authorized service model? Because if anything, I would imagine as a consumer, you'd be better at it because you'd have access to all the chips and the parts and the schematics and the diagrams, so that you wouldn't have to use like ZXW tool.
Well, that's the thing. It's when you build this entire enterprise where person A is not allowed to talk to person B. In fact, a student at my most recent course, when we were talking about these issues, he was telling me, his own experience. I've trained a lot of people that have been former geniuses or within the Apple ecosystem at some point, that they all say things like, as part of this very strategic, institutionalized repair chain, they don't want, and it makes sense, they don't want for a person, a cog, to operate outside of their column of expertise, which means if you know about, greeting people, you're not allowed to do sales. If you know about sales, you're not allowed to do repair. And I would guess that goes all the way up the chain, so that if you are the RF engineer, you know about that, but you don't know about board design. That I would expect for that to be, it's such a global thing that defines Apple, this strategic, tight control and compartmentalizing, institutionalizing repair. I think that it would be hard to find somebody that had the breadth of knowledge of the entire device, software, hardware, how it all works together.
So just to be clear, even if you were willing to pay for it, there's no certification you could get for data recovery, and there's no way for you to get any access to parts, schematics, or diagrams in order to perform data recovery on their products.
That is correct. No matter what, if you are a desperate mom standing there bawling your eyes out because the entire 2 years of your now dead infant's life are on this phone that fell in the toilet today, that Jessa could recover, they will tell you that is impossible. It cannot be done. And then if you begged and pleaded, they would refer you to an organization that, is pretty good with hard drive recovery, who doesn't know very much about phones, and you would very likely never get that data back. And that's what's really sad.
Yeah. Okay. And now I also want to touch on the screen part, because you touched on the schematics and the diagrams and the parts for data recovery. A lot of people don't really seem aware that Apple authorized service providers don't get access to the machinery required to properly replace the screens in the new devices. So you need to pair the Touch ID to the button to the phone. I will. Anyway, you have to apply the button. You have to match the button to the board of the phone, and they replace the button with the screen. With the newer ones, you have to calibrate 3D Touch, and that requires this Horizon machine. If you became an Apple authorized service provider, is there any guarantee that you would get the machine required for you to actually perform repairs on screens of the iPhones from 6 and up?
Me? Oh, heavens, no. Not someone like me. I'm way too much of a risk. I doubt that I personally could get Apple authorized at all, because I would be too much of a risk that I wouldn't toe the line and follow the company rule. But here's the deal. If you wanted to actually change an iPhone screen, you really don't need the Horizon machine. I mean, look around. People change iPhone screens. My 11-year-old has changed an iPhone screen many times. You don't actually need it. The only reason that you need the Horizon machine at all is if you can't be trusted to take the home button from the cracked screen and transfer it over to the new screen. Yeah, front camera, ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, you got to move that stuff over. Now, that's not that difficult. My 11-year-old has done it with ease many times. He cracks his phone a lot, and every time here at my house, get over here, change your own screen. But the Apple institutionalized repair does not allow that. They can't ask the geniuses to do that without making mistakes. So what they say is take that whole screen, put it in the box to, guess what, be refurbished, just like the screens that I bought. Yeah, go get refurbished, turn back into an Apple screen, and they will open up a new screen. Now, that brand new screen has a new home button, new proximity ambient light sensor, and front camera. that goes into the phone. And then because the home button has the fingerprint sensor in it, it has to be paired to the logic board. So they put it into this machine, hit the magic button, and it comes out with a working fingerprint sensor. All right. That Horizon screen then is required for anybody to follow that type of institutionalized repair or fix any problem where you accidentally tear the home button. So that is withheld tightly, so much so that it's hard to find a picture even in the news. I can remember talking to journalists where they would show me like, is this it? Is this it? Have we finally like seen the mystery machine? Oh my God. When, it was difficult even for a picture to leak from one of the few Apple stores that had this machine. It is becoming more widely available now. And rumor is that, if you looked all over the globe, you might even find 1 or 2 Apple authorized, super nerds that are tight with a boss that actually got one of them. I'm not sure.
Will Apple actually sell you an original iPhone 10 screen as an Apple authorized service provider if you're not one of the shops that was bestowed this Horizon machine? So let's say I'm an Apple authorized service provider. I just opened today, but they did not see me fit to get a Horizon machine. Can I just go to their program and order an iPhone 10 screen through them, or will they say that I have to mail it to a depot? I'm not 100% sure on that. And my guess is that they would say you have to mail it to a depot because otherwise they would have to entrust you to do those transfers. My guess is that may not be true for international Apple authorized service providers where the rules are a little bit more relaxed. So that they may have different rules where they may allow those guys to give a shot at transferring over the small parts so that you don't need the Horizon machine. Not sure, but for sure, as you know from your calling up AASP, there are some AASP, I'm not sure if it's the common case or not, that say, hey, you got a cracked screen? Come on in. Aren't you friends with a local AASP?
Yes.
And is she able to order iPhone 10 or 12 or 8 screens?
I'm not sure. I haven't talked to her about the 8 and 10 screens. I know she hated screens, and I know, I don't want to throw her under the bus, but I remember having the feeling years ago when I heard her talk about screens. She didn't want to do iPhones at all. She felt like she was in fact actually forced to do iPhone work. It's not profitable for her. She's really just a glorified mail in, let me take your phone and mail it in. She's just a glorified UPS. But she, kind of was thinking about what would it take to actually help my customers, to actually make them happy, to actually fix their device right now. And she's so not a part of the regular independent repair community. She doesn't know things like, hey, a bad ambient light sensor or proximity sensor on the 5S will cause red screen of death. Things like that she has never heard of. So she was, asking me where I got screens and wondering about Amazon and eBay screens.
Oh my God.
Which is like, dude, you're the AASP. You of anybody. I mean, at least import your shit and risk it getting thrown away. Don't buy eBay broken, crappy aftermarket. No, you can't do that. All right. I doubt she ever did it, but she thought about it.
All right. So there's a good chance that you could pay all the money to redo your parking lot, redo your store, have all your employees in uniform, get all the certifications, buy all the machinery, and still not be able to replace screens at your location without giving people a turnaround time of 1 to 2 weeks, at which point they're going to laugh and walk out the door.
Yes.
So your choices are to do that or to order screens from China and pray that they come and don't get seized.
Yes. Yep. And that's what the problem is. And here's what I was telling you before we started this, that when I first got this letter, and this was just a couple days ago, it was 2 days ago, I made a post on a, traditional independent repair community, group, Repair Fam, and just said...
Shout out to Ernie Chambers for that one.
Yeah. Who else has had to deal with this? And I was starting to add this up right when we decided to do the stream, where, a few minutes later, here's a guy who I know, nice guy, and he sells some small parts and things modestly. He said they got me for a $15,000 shipment once. I got a message from Luke Piper, who I'd love to talk to on stream at some point, where he is an American Kansas boy living in China, and he has really, understands the process of refurbishing screens really well. And so he has a business with his partners to get screens from the US, sent to Hong Kong and go through the process of getting them professionally refurbished to, turn them back into iPhone screens. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that if something like a thin piece of glass breaks, that we should throw away this beautiful LCD. That's insane. Why do that? So then he got hit for $84,000. Same thing. These were his screens that he bought and paid for, having them shipped to himself in China, and then him shipping it back to his partner in the US, and they were seized for $84,000. And then if we kind of keep going down this list here, Alex has a story, happened to me. David, I have one of these from several years ago. We haven't imported screens since. Kenton Bird says he's showing me an invoice right here for Samsung screens that were confiscated to the tune of $11,000. Michael Oberdick said his first package was seized 2 years ago. I mean, this is the point here is that this is not, congrats on your first love letter. I received about 15 of these in 2014. This is a trend. This is a problem. This is not just somebody's picking on Jessa. I mean, this is why I want to kind of shine a light on this problem, where it is really not cool to use a law that was meant to ferret out, hey, somebody put a fake Apple logo. That's counterfeit. Well, this Apple logo was put there by Apple. It's a genuine Apple logo on a genuine flex. That's not the same as busting some kind of secret voodoo backroom counterfeiting ring. This is importing a good steward of the environment refurbished screen that is indistinguishable in form or function from the one that was already on your screen, already on your phone. This is just silly.
All right, so you've spoken in support of the right to repair bill, and you would like the ability to be able to just go to an Apple store or buy our screen, or even just go to a website where you can order a screen that you know is the Apple original. And one of the criticisms of this is that if you cannot force a company to sell parts, that's communist, that's evil. And going back to early 2013, I remember when the Mac Pro, that little trash can looking machine came out, the logistics with Apple were so bad that you could order the machine on their site, and you would have a 6 to 10 week wait time to get a machine that they were putting together because it was so hard for them to keep up with production. So when it comes to items like the iPhone that have such ridiculous worldwide demand that they can barely keep up with without selling parts, do you think it would adversely affect their ability to sell these parts or to sell these products if they have to worry about opening up their supply chain to the independent repair community? And how would you address that criticism?
Well, if the rule is you got to supply parts, then you got to supply parts. If you are having a part crisis that's going to make production of new devices impossible because you don't have enough, then to me that tells me that what you really have is a recycling problem. If you are saying I can't sell you this LCD, Lewis, because I can't make enough of them, then you damn sure shouldn't be throwing them away when they get a crack in it. That's what I would say. I would say if you've got a problem with, part insufficient supply, then you need to do better at recycling. And you can do that really easily by just allowing people how about this? Let's just do nothing other than let's stop throwing stuff in the trash can that comes in boxes from China going to independent repair that would be putting them on screens. Let's just start with that. Let's just stop doing that and see what happens. Okay, so
if they, let's say they stop doing that and they still say, okay, you can get your screens, you just have to wait 12 weeks. Is that something where you would be okay with it, or is that something where you would say, right to repair bill says BS, you take them to court and say, I want my screen sooner?
No, I mean, if that's the right to repair bill says, you just can't be a monopoly. You can't say, we're taking all your screens, Jess, and we're throwing them in the trash. And we are only going to give screens to the 5 people in the US with a Horizon machine, and you can't have one. So I would say, well, right to repair says that if they have a Horizon machine, I can get a Horizon machine. And if they say that'll be $100,000, so be it. Then let's pass a hat and get one in the Northeast and wherever else. And then, the right to repair just says that they have to keep things equal between their authorized repair and their and independent repair.
All right, so Frank Laturco says, have you seen these part issues with other brands? And that's a question I get a lot. Is this just unique to Apple, or are we focusing on Apple because they are the worst purveyor of this trend?
That is something that I'm not sure about. I know that because we don't really do a whole lot of screen replacement, we are primarily doing board repair and data recovery. So we're dealing with chips, which, by the way, just to be clear, they also threw away about $100 worth of touch chips. Have nothing to do with the screens, but when something is in the same box with contraband, I love that word. This is contraband. Woo!
They probably took them away to install M1 jumpers on it for you for convenience.
Yeah, if it's shipped with contraband, then it is contraband. So they tossed all of my order of touch ICs, which totally sucks. But these, the other suppliers, we know that I believe that with the Samsung screens that there are avenues to get bona fide Samsung screens from Samsung authorized distributors. That may not be true, but my general impression is that if you want to, you can. It's certainly more affordable to refurbish those screens yourself. And so that's what a lot of people do. And I think that people have the right to take a broken Samsung screen, send it to China or in-house or to the guy down the road and have them refurbish them. Refurbishing screens used to be really difficult. And now, like any other industry, technology has come along so that making a LCD with broken glass turned back into an LCD with good glass is pretty robust. And that it's not something that's kind of a back of the truck operation where you're going to have like pubes stuck in your screen. It's not like that. It's going to come out just fine and work just like the original. Yeah. So you have in my opinion, you have the right to refurbish your screens wherever you want and get them back. And they're going to, of course, have the same logo on them that they had ever since the moment they were created to begin with.
Yeah, I know that this is somewhat a problem with other brands, but it's not. The reason that I focus on it so much with you, damn you and your echo. Yeah, I muted you. The reason I focus on it so much with Apple is because Apple is one of the they're the easiest target because of the durability of their devices. So if I take a Moto G, it may be difficult to get a screen for it, but I can throw that phone at the wall 6 times and did on camera, and it doesn't break. Whereas with an iPhone, it's like, I dropped it from here to here, and it's broken already. And other manufacturers, when it comes to schematics, they won't give out schematics very often. However, they don't have 16 sensors in their machine that if one of them fails, the machine becomes completely worthless and slow. So it is an issue with other manufacturers, and it seems to be an issue where everybody seems to follow Apple's lead. Apple solders the SSD to the board, everybody else does. Apple glues the battery in the phone, everybody else does. Apple gets rid of the SD card slot, everybody else does. So it's like one of these cancers that you really want to localize to one organ and get rid of before it spreads throughout your body.
I think we were talking about this the other day, that the one of my students was asking me, like, hey, why don't I see you got tons of iPhones here? Where's all the Samsungs? We do fix Samsungs. We do data recovery for Samsungs. They don't fail as much because of this same general problem, which is every iPhone that's in my shop right now is here for iPhone 7 Plus audio IC, iPhone 6 Plus touch IC, or one of the handful of other what we call flexion-based defects. So Apple is still screwing these logic boards into these bendy housings that get, twisty. I think Samsungs do as well, but in the Samsungs, the logic board floats. It's not screwed down. So the board floats, you can twist the housing. It doesn't get the stress that the iPhone logic boards do. So they just don't have as many failures. Yeah, and
Apple makes a very easy target for themselves here by having devices that have all these failures. The iPhone 5 power button, iPhone 6 touch IC, iPhone 6S battery failure, iPhone 7 audio IC, iPhone 8, pending. And
iPhone 8 is going to get the same kind of problems that everything else did. One of the other things that has really driven me crazy about this whole I noticed on my community page when I posted the Vice article about my custom SEIZURE. And Jason, when he wrote the article, he said, Jessa bought screens on the gray market. And I noticed that people in my community said, well, gray market, shouldn't you not be doing that? And I made the point that, well, there is no white market. There's gray market, and that's the only market. So
Gray privilege.
They kind of associated gray market, sounds like black market, sounds bad, sounds shoddy. Knee-jerk reaction is that this is bad. And my point is that it really isn't. That this is really the only option that you have. And it's kind of like I just did this Good Morning America story, which I brought to the attention of ABC. I called them up and said, hey, people don't know that they really shouldn't be using the Apple charging cables that are not certified, that the ones from the gas station kill phones, because that's one of these other common problems, is that iPhones go up in smoke all the time when people connect a dollar store charging cable, not realizing, hey, there's chips in there, there's a little surge protector, dude, you got to have that, and if you don't, you're gonna get in trouble. So I'm trying to do the right thing for my consumers when I'm pointing out, hey, you don't want counterfeit chargers. And everybody's cool with that. But then in the next day when I say, but you do want refurbished screens because those are good. You can't really play it both ways and be like, oh, Jessa, thank you very much for shining a light on the terrible counterfeit chargers. And then, Jessa, we should throw you in jail because you're using the terrible counterfeit screens 4 days later. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so Robert asks, should there be a ban on counterfeit parts and ICs?
Counterfeit parts in ICs? Where is that? Let's see. Oh, I'm looking at your chat up here. So let's talk about ICs. So ICs there is no counterfeit IC. So a chip IC, integrated circuit chip, a little dude that goes on the board, that's like a Lego. There was no such thing as a counterfeit NXP TriStar chip. There are plenty out there that are made by NXP. There's no exclusivity arrangement. It's not difficult to source most of the ICs. There's only 2 custom chips in any iPhone, the power management chip and the CPU itself. Anything else, a Toshiba NAND is a Toshiba NAND. They sell those to lots of people, and you can easily require an authentic or genuine one. So there is no off-brand chip. For aftermarket parts, one of the people that does a good job came and visited us, Riwa in China. They are also on the mission to educate consumers about different qualities of screens. One of the points that Kevin, CEO of Riwa, made when he met with me was saying, if you go to India, those guys, their culture in India, they're never going to want to pay for, this $60 screen. They're going to always opt for the $20 screen because it works. And that's what they care about, just make the device work again. Culturally, that's what he sees there. And he says, if you go to Switzerland, they're never going to opt for the aftermarket $20 screen. They're always going to want the $60 as close to original as you can possibly get screen, because they have these longer contracts and they want their phone to last longer. And so he felt that there is a market for different consumers that will value different things. Somebody may not care if the LCD has a little yellow discoloration on the edge if it means they can save $50 on a screen job. So no, I don't think that we should just outlaw anything aftermarket.
How does the Zeebo get screens?
Well, they get them from the truck, and everybody else gets the ones that fell off a truck. So they all screens are manufactured in China, and they get sent as parts for repair to the depot in Texas and wherever else they are.
Someone says misinformation ICs can be bootlegged or misinformation ICs can be bootlegged or counterfeit. But is there any real point to counterfeiting an IC chip when you can buy the original IC chip for $1 or $2?
Right. Well, okay. Chris Luna, if you're saying misinformation, back it up, bro. Give me an example. Give me an example in an iPhone of any IC ever that has ever not been authentic. How about that?
Yeah, I agree. There are things that are not worth counterfeiting. When you can get the original for $1 or $2, it just doesn't make any sense.
The about practical information. If you're going to change any chip in an iPhone, there is no drive for creating counterfeit chips because they're not expensive.
So what are the options that you have available to you to fight this claim so that you can get your parts back from customs? What are the avenues available to you, and which one do you think you're going to take, and why?
The letter told me that I can do nothing, and it also told me that I can file a petition. So I can write up something that is what I'll probably do, at least initially, which is just an attempt to educate. So what I've noticed, same with you, when we go around and talk for right to repair to anyone that we've met in any elevator in any legislative building ever, that people are interested in how your phones work. What do they look like inside? Tell me about them. It's not, I wouldn't expect the guys that are working at customs to have any idea how an iPhone LCD works. That's not really their business. So I think some education. Hey, let me in a spirit of general human compassion. You're a person, I'm a person. I don't have any ill will towards you, but let's just talk, and I'll show you some pictures, and we can kind of talk a little bit about what makes a screen and understand why it might be that someone who holds a trademark on this Apple feels that it's not okay to consider, that this part, which I consider a refurbished and new or hybrid chimera part. This is not an Apple original screen anymore. It is a new entity. This is a refurbished replacement screen that contains some components that were once part of an original Apple screen. I don't believe that that is counterfeit, and I believe that that would be excluded from seizure under the first sale exclusion. Apple was already paid for this screen when they sold it the first time. Now it's been refurbished. They don't deserve to confiscate it because they've already been paid. I would just try to make that point and try to educate them. I think it's fair enough. I don't expect everyone to know, every detail about somebody else's profession, and see how it goes. And I would really like to see them say, you're absolutely right. We're sorry. Here's your screens back, and we're not going to bother you anymore. And we're also going to keep that in mind the next time we see a box from any one of these other people that have said they've struggled with this as well. Now, if that doesn't happen, I still feel very strongly that that message needs to be conveyed. And if it takes a judge having to rule on that in order to make that kind of get out of the hair of everybody, then I'm going to pursue it that way if the petition initially gets denied.
So this is not something that you're just going to allow to happen lying down?
No, of course not. That's not how I roll.
It wouldn't be you otherwise.
What would you do?
Oh, I would take it as high as possible.
Would you file the petition, or would you go straight to, because you have the option to just go straight to take it to the judge?
I would do the petition first because I think I would lose some goodwill with the judge if I didn't go through every avenue before getting to your desk. It's kind of like, asking for the owner at a business. If somebody said, I want to speak to the owner before they talk to Sunday, you would probably tell them to F off. Whereas if they talk to Sunday and they spend time with Sunday, and then Sunday said, hey, can you look at this customer? You may be more apt to be nice to them. So I would definitely do the petition first. But if the petition got nowhere, I would definitely take it all the way up to the judge. And as you said, it makes total sense to not see it as some sort of malicious thing. You don't have ill will towards customs, and or you don't have any ill will towards. Yeah, the typo. And any residual ill will that anybody may have towards ICE if they're a Democrat. But outside of that, I would not go into that office thinking that the individual that confiscated my screens was the one personally saying, we're going to destroy repair. That's not how it works. There's a system in place, and it starts from the top up. It goes from the top down, and then affects the people that are there that are just looking to do their job.
I know you showed in your other video that they said, the trademark representative, Leah Karras from Cupertino. I'm not 100% convinced that Leah knows what a screen looks like. I don't know that Leah's ever seen the inside of an iPhone. I don't know that she's ever really looked at this. because of this same thing, where this systematic kind of compartmentalization. I bet that she's damn sure not allowed to talk to people that actually make and assemble these screens. And it may just be a mistake, where she just makes an assumption, or doesn't really understand what refurbished means. I wouldn't rule that out, just because I like to think the best about people, honestly.
That is where we differ. Now, LabTech says a lot of the refurbished screens from China are not the same quality of an original iPhone screen. I'm trying to translate from whatever he's saying to English. Do you not think Apple has a right to protect that quality?
I don't, and here's why. I think that the person who should be making the decisions is not the person who is sitting at a desk at Apple, and it's not the person who is working at a desk at DHL. I think that the consumer should be the one making the decision. So I think that if I were to sell you a screen that was aftermarket in a way that this was not a good screen, if I sold you a screen that had touch lag, if I sold you a screen that had dead spots, or a pixel was bad, or it cracked really easy, or the flex tore off, that's from a relationship between me and you. You're my consumer. You bought it from me. Your problem is with me. I chose the part and I sold it to you. So your beef is just with me. And if you come to me, I can refund you. I can realize that this wasn't a good thing to do, and I can go get better parts. Or I can be a douchebag and say, 2-day, 24-hour warranty, bro, you're out of luck. In which case, you're never going to come back. I'll go out of business. You're going to tell all your friends. And I would kind of let the market decide that. I don't think that you can stay in business for very long if you are not doing your job. And I see it as our job as independent repair professionals. It's our job to understand how screens work. That's our job. It's not necessarily Leah's job or DHL's job. It's my job. It's my job to know what should I be putting in your phone, what is best for you.
Isn't the average... now, there are a lot of people that are going to assume that the average consumer is not that smart. The average consumer just sees, hey, I know somebody that has an iPhone and the touchscreen wasn't working. Apple sucks. And they're not going to blame that, the fact that customer went to a shop that sucks, that replaces iPhone 8 screens for $50 and blame them. They're going to blame Apple. Shouldn't Apple be allowed to do this, to clamp down on our freedom to choose who we want to fix our stuff? Because if people do a bad job of fixing our stuff, it's going to come back to them. People are going to go to the Apple store with these messed up screens that don't work properly. It's going to clog up their customer service. It's going to hurt their reputation. Don't they have a right to do this so that after working at an Apple store, 8 hours a day dealing with people coming in with long screw damage and screens that pop out of the phone, wouldn't you want to see this stuff get confiscated so that people just weren't getting screwed over anymore?
Two ways to solve that problem. One is exactly what you said, which is let's clamp down. We don't want people to have the misfortune and the eye strain of these pieces of crap digitizers. So let's try and make it so they can't ever get one. Well, first of all, if we start talking about, so let's confiscate them all. Oh, wait, we can't confiscate the crap ones because they don't have the Apple logo. So the only ones that we can get rid of are the good ones, and just let the crap ones can go right through because they don't have a logo on them. So there's nothing that we can really do to staunch the supply of crappy parts that have nothing to do with us. So that's going to kind of flood into the market. So let's try to clamp down and make it really, really hard for anybody to kind of get their screen changed, and we're going to just make it super controlled so that if you want an Apple screen, you got to mail your phone out for a week. Well, nobody's going to want to do that. You can't really solve the problem effectively that way. The other alternative, how about this idea? Why don't we just make these screens readily available so that anybody can get them? A DIY person could get them. Any store could get them. Then we'll have a lot of these out there. And in addition to that, we can do what we can to raise awareness at the level of the consumer that there are not just one screen. There are lots of different screen qualities out there. That way the consumer will recognize, hey, everyone knows when you go down to get your oil changed at the mechanic, he'll ask you, do you want the good oil or the crappy oil? And if you choose, I'll take the crappy oil, you really can't complain when your car gas mileage isn't that great. It's your choice.
It's genuinely interesting how with each new iteration, you're able to take away people's freedoms. There were so many things that you were able to do with, let's say, a PC app or an app on your Mac or your PC, but then when you go over to a phone, there's a lot of these little limitations and things added into it. It seems like with every generation, you kind of get to reset the standards. And people were used to having so many freedoms when it came to their automobile, but those same people who are used to those freedoms with their automobile will argue against having those freedoms and defend the people trying to take away those freedoms when it comes to their portable electronic devices. Because nobody would put up with this if it was with their cars, and they didn't when they passed a repair bill about 6 years ago. But they're totally happy to put up with that when it comes to their portable electronics, which is stultifying.
That's a culture that's changing. I mean, I think that people, not so much now, but even a few years ago, the idea was pervasive that you had to have your screen changed at Apple. It was considered this sort of like white glove sacrosanct, go in the fume hood with a white lab coat on, and it had to be done by the Apple geniuses. Only the Apple geniuses were qualified to turn the Penelope driver, and the rest of us, will get fingerprints inside it. Now, when you see Jeannie and her program teaching fifth graders, and they changed like 300 iPhones and had 0 problems. Then people are starting to go like, okay, so it's basically like a flashlight or anything else. You don't really think anything else of opening up your baby monitor and changing the battery in it. And now an iPhone is starting to become just another piece of consumer electronics, and people expect to be able to repair consumer electronics. It's losing its sort of golden image of it being some sort of delicate flower that can only be touched by the godlike hands of the Apple genius. I mean, even the Apple genius. Now it's Apple genius, and most people do that. Like, I mean, people that come into my shop, they're like, I went and saw the Apple genius, and it didn't used to be like that. I like you got a K-Rotan saying, does Apple still wipe your data when you send it in for screen repair? They don't wipe your data. They don't give you back your phone. So that's their general MO, is that it's institutionalized. So your phone is not your phone. It's a copy of iPhone 6S. And when you send in your copy of iPhone 6S, they're going to give you another copy of iPhone 6S. So that means you're going to be getting back somebody else's phone with whatever little bit of bendy they had on their board, any kind of specks of water damage, doesn't matter. As long as that logic board, that battery, that screen combination passes their test, then it goes out to you. Your actual phone goes to somebody else after it gets fixed. So no, you're not going to get your phone back for any kind of Apple service.
All right, and just to clarify, since I see a bunch of comments on this. Yes, I realize as somebody who has repaired audio stuff for a long time, there are counterfeit ICs and transistors. What I'm saying is not that there are no counterfeit ICs and transistors, but within the specific sub-niche of iPhone board repair, there's nobody bothering to make knockoff TriStar, knockoff Tigris, knockoff LED drivers, because a lot of that stuff is already available. And I'm just going to link to people to the 52-minute timestamp for when they all start screaming in the comments because they didn't get that far. I guess at this point, I just want to take some of the good questions from the audience, if there are any in the chat. Do you see anything in the chat that's good, worthwhile answering?
Let's see. I didn't really read very much. Let's see. I mean, I really like one of the points that you made, which is is that they really are trying to say that changing the glass on a expensive and beautiful LCD makes this piece counterfeit. It's the use of the word counterfeit. And that word counterfeit was in the letter to me. That if, as a society, if we're cool with saying you should throw this away when the glass cracks in order to not be a counterfeiter, that's not good. We don't want to be throwing away. Think about what it takes to make one of these things. These things get dug up out of the earth. That stuff doesn't grow back very easily. We really shouldn't. Do we even have the right to take an LCD and just throw it in the trash because the glass is cracked and we don't want to be a counterfeiter? Let's start coming up with some vocabulary that's positive. Now, the word refurb, it doesn't even sound good. It sounds too much like returd, don't you think? Like if you're buying something on eBay that's that's refurbished, you generally think, I'd rather have new. Well, I don't think that the word refurbished is really the right word to describe what is now a really robust process. In fact, Apple doesn't use the word refurb. They say remanufactured.
Certified pre-owned.
They don't say that. They say remanufactured.
I say certified pre-owned. I learned that lesson when I applied to be a car salesman.
Like how to train your genius. Like it was some kind of it was hilarious. It was on Reddit or something.
How to train your genius.
I made that part up, but it was something about that. Like it was the Genius Training Manual, and it said something specific. Like we don't say refurbished because people, it's just got a connotation. We say remanufactured. Sounds like made new again. It's the same thing. We're replacing the glass in a way that's totally new. You would never be able to distinguish this LCD from one that was just taken off of the phone. So let's kind of adopt some vocabulary that sounds nice and kind of clean that up a little bit so that it sounds like a positive thing to do. Let's stop saying gray market. Let's say Jessa bought remanufactured original LCDs. How about that? And it sounds a lot, reconditioned. All right, reconditioned. That sounds good. I like that. It is kind of reconditioned. It sounds like what you would do to something that's bumpy and you smooth it out. Reconditioned, resurfaced, something like that.
Let's see.
Yeah, and yet they're willing to throw around the term genius pretty freely. Exactly.
I mean, also, do you even know if those screens are actually refurbished? How do you know that isn't simply an LCD that one of those factories sold you because their employee that was tired of getting $2 an hour decided, here, you can have the extras that we made, and then that somebody else used that to assemble a screen? Do you even really know if those were refurbished screens versus just ones that were constructed by somebody but Apple?
I do, because I asked, because I was concerned about that. Because if that were the case, then I think that's not cool, because I think that the reason why it's okay to import this is because Apple was already paid. I don't think that you can just pick up a box of LCDs. That's stealing from them. You can't take a box of their LCDs out the back and then sell it on the gray market, And so that was the very first thing I did is I asked the supplier, what can you tell me about how these came to be? And, so she, I made sure, that we could, that these were part of a really large supply chain, which is, anytime that you turn in you go back to Verizon with your iPhone 6 that has a cracked screen and you get back $10 instead of $50 because it has the cracked screen, that screen has value. It never gets thrown away. That screen goes to a recycler or refurbisher. It goes to a recycler in mass, where these guys shuck these phones like oysters and they make a big old box of screens. And then those screens are going to be turned back into good screens as long as the LCD is still good, which makes sense. Of course, we should be doing that. We shouldn't be throwing that stuff away. Bad, that's the end of the life. But if it's good, it's easy to turn it back into a screen. So somebody has to do that job. And where they're really good at it is in China. So that gets on a boat and it goes to China. And then in China, there are guys that do nothing but use fancy machinery to turn it back into a screen. And then those screens get sold. And that's kind of just the way the whole thing works. You can switch the broken glass with a new one.
Sid, why don't you buy the glass replacement machine so that you can replace it? Is the question.
Well, guess what's on my search history from this weekend? Yeah, so I'm getting ready to jump in the whole Oka Masters versus G-Tool fight, and
that's not fun. Well, let's just be honest here. The reason that we don't do that is because it sucks. It's miserable, repetitive labor.
Think so.
It's miserable, brainless, repetitive labor. It's like it's the coal mines of iPhone repair, really.
Well, I'm not going to do it, but you know who'd be good at that? Christy, Jean. They love to do stuff that. I mean, honestly, I really do think that you and I need to use our brains. We like to solve problems, but other technicians just really liked a predictable problem where they can take something broken and make it new again. And there's a pride in being able to take something like a cracked screen and make it indistinguishable from new. So one of my students in this last week was a guy named Jose. And he has been refurbishing screens using one of the like the big two competing technologies. And I asked him, like, face to face, like, hey, Jose, will Christy be able to refurbish an iPad Pro screen? And he said yes. And then we talked about kind of scale of difficulty. And he said an iPhone 6 screen, it'd be like 15 minutes, but something like iPad Air 2, that's a $200 screen. The LCD is worth $70, so we see a lot of those. Since we're iPad rehab, we see a lot of iPads, even though we hate iPads. And he said without a doubt that Christy or Jean would, with practice, become proficient at doing that kind of screen refurbishing with the new technology machines that are out there now. So yeah, we're going to totally look into that. Even though we don't do very many screens, it's still probably worth it. So I don't want to get another one of these letters.
Yeah, and you may do more screens if you're able to do them at a more competitive cost and you're able to do them quickly because you're able to advertise that you do them. Because you do them quickly and that you're comfortable with it. You may be able to advertise it at a lower cost and even start advertising it when you're confident. And maybe then you'll be getting more screens.
Honestly, what I think we'll do is, I do seriously intend to look into this. This will be a little bit of a shock to my team. I haven't told them yet. But, we have a really good relationship with our other local competitors. So we work and solve all the board level problems of the guy at Solaris and Greg over at Genius Repair and Kristen at Fix and a Zip. They all are regulars. They'll come in and we'll fix their problem instantly so that they can save face with their customer. And so those guys, we refer out to them Samsung screens and things that we don't stock. But if we did sort of invest in refurbishing, then we would just try to refurbish the screens for all of our local competitors. And I think that that could also be really strong because I love how repair works like that. This even in the city of Rochester, Victor's over there, Webster's over there, the city is over there. We're kind of out in the South, and I like that we share information and get along and refer to each other. I think there's plenty of phones out there, and I think that I'd love to see collaboration instead of competition in this industry.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, there was not a lot of that because there was this idea that when the industry was smaller, if you know something, then that's my customer directly lost. And that was also back when things were a lot simpler. You don't have to be a genius to replace an iPhone 3 screen, but you would really like some help from somebody when it comes to how to do an iPhone 10 screen in a profitable and quick and cost-efficient manner, especially when you have all these new tools that you need. It's no longer you need one of those stupid little blue plastic pry tools. And
the blue plastic board breakers, that's what we call those.
I have one of those things here that it comes in handy every now and then.
What?
The little blue thing? Opening the bottom of the new MacBook or like smashing the bottom case open is a pain in the ass. Someone says here in Brazil, the word remanufactured has the same bad connotation of refurbished for some reason, but most people are okay with that. And Neagle says in Soviet Russia, Apple confiscates you.
Yeah, I see that.
Could you please ask Jessa to briefly explain how once your logic board is gone on the new MacBooks and you can't decrypt, etc.? I don't know if that's a question or a statement. But
where is that? Is that
Prodigy Australia says, could you please ask Jessa to briefly explain how once your logic board is gone on new MacBooks and you can't decrypt, etc.
All right. If your logic board is gone, you can't do anything. You've got a pile of parts.
Yeah, because the SSD itself is soldered onto the board, and a lot of people think that you can use that new Apple tool that to always recover them. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. If a chip called Piccolo is broken on the board, the SSD won't get power, or if that chip is shorted and is shorting the SSD to ground, you're genuinely screwed to the point where you have to repair the board.
What are the new chips that you got for MacBooks? I was just reading iPhone 10. I fixed up our first iPhone 10 this week, and like Chestnut is now Acorn. Like, it's so hilarious. You have to figure all this stuff out again. There's these two new chips called Romeo and Juliet. And in the iPhone 7, it's Homer and Maggie, which I don't understand why that's not Homer and Marge. Like, it's kind of weird. Homer and Maggie are related to each other.
Somebody at Fox has got to be suing Apple for that, because that is counterfeit, copyright, trademark infringement, all rights reserved of The Simpsons. They have no right to use The Simpsons trademark or copyright. And I think Homer's
get after it. That's a counterfeit. That now my iPhone 10 is counterfeit.
Yeah, but With the new MacBook, some parts of it are identical to the old version, like the backlight circuit has barely changed at all from 2015, and there are other parts that are entirely different. Like you're looking at a schematic for an SSD when you look at the board, not even just the board. So it's interesting because I've never seen a schematic for an SSD before, but it's right there on the board, and you can see how the SSD is put together, and a lot of that stuff is ridiculously complicated and not going to be fun to do data recovery on. We did do a data recovery on a machine with a bad Piccolo IC where when the battery went below 30%, it would stop seeing the SSD. That's great. There's nothing better than when your SSD is soldered to your board and fails within 1 year of buying the machine. Go Apple. But we got the chips to fix that problem, and they're not really cheap, but that sucks.
All right, so Louis, question for you. Comments on regulation ideas in our industry. I don't like regulation, but I think we should get there before the government does and at least be part of the conversation. It's a good comment. What do you think should be done for regulating parts quality, repair quality? How do you think it should work?
That's a cluster because that's going to change with every single generation. Every single generation, you have different ideas of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And, for example, like replacing just the glass on an iPhone 3G is something any idiot could do. Then with the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 5, that became something that was very difficult to do. So how are you going to regulate that? Are you going to say, well, you're allowed to replace the glass if you're level 3, but you're only allowed to, and you can't do it unless you're a level 3. But then a new phone comes out, and the level 3 people are totally confused, and they screw everything up. The regulation will never, ever, ever keep up with the speed at which this this industry is evolving. What I do think it should be regulated to some extent is warranty. So, for example, I can't tell you that I'm giving you a 10 or 20-day warranty. The reason that, and I had this one woman walk in the other day who really wanted us to fix the GPU on her 2011 MacBook Pro. She was really wanted us to give her a new GPU, and she looked at Steve and said, and she was being kind of about it. It's not a word I'm going to say in a public video, but she looked at me and said, can I, as the customer, ask you as the business to fix it with me fully knowing that it may not work and pay you? And Steve goes, no. Because the regulation, as put forth, which I think is kind of reasonable, says that we need to offer a 30-day warranty. Absolute minimum. If I, as a licensed business, do not offer you a 30-day warranty, you can file a complaint with me and have my license revoked. And I understand that. If you're offering a warranty of less than 30 days, you're kind of a douchebag. So I think that there are regulations in place and there are licenses that you have to get. I don't see a need to add more to it. I think within our industry that we should have some sort of general ethics and, not be excited at the idea. There should be just some general shaming in our industry. If you know somebody that's buying $8 iPhone screens, let them know that you think that that's lame. If you know somebody that is putting random chips on MacBook boards that just kind of look the same. I'm uploading a video on that. There's a crappy mall franchise that decided to put a charging chip where a clock chip goes, and this was on one of the boards with the SSD is soldered to the board. So they did use a counterfeit chip. That is not counterfeit. That's original chip for the wrong board.
I never heard of it.
No, but seriously, I'm going to get a lot of flack from my next video where I'm going to talk about a mall franchise that almost destroyed a board with a solid-state drive is soldered onto it. In our industry, we need to call out the BS before the regulators do. I agree that we should do it before regulators do, because a regulator is going to come in with a hammer. A regulator it's one thing to say, hey, can you please stop confiscating our parts at the border? The only reason that somebody like me that likes smaller government and less regulation is involved with this is because I'm sick and tired of getting calls from law firms saying, hey, you showed where a fuse was, or hey, you imported screens that you paid for because you have willing customers in a voluntary transaction with your vendor. We can fix that. That's serious crap that we can't fix without getting involved with the government, because the government's already involved in screwing with us. But when it comes to bad quality and things of that nature, that's something that we need to solve within our business. The government's going to come in and then try to say, okay, you need to get paid to get your part certified by us, and that process is going to take 3 to 6 months. No. You don't want a government bureaucrat, if you're a vendor, judging whether or not your parts are good enough or labeling them. That's going to be a nightmare. And who's going to be the
I don't want somebody to tell me that I have to throw away the screws in every iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to be for every law that you make, you have to have a policeman. For every regulation, there has to be a policeman. A policeman that says, "Hey, customs, stop throwing away Jessa's shipments." That's cool with me. But who's going to be the screen policeman? Who's going to say, like, really? Would you want that job? Would you want to know the person that volunteers to take the job of screen policeman? It's going to be some bitter piece of crap that couldn't hack it as a repair shop owner or a technician that has just enough experience to fuck with you. Huh?
You know what it reminds me of? I had a student once who was telling me about being I can't remember. What's it called when you're soldering certified? ISO or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was one of these guys that was certified, and he would manufacture these circuit boards for various industries. I think he worked for Lockheed Martin or something like that. And then you'd have to go take your work to the person who didn't solder, who was just there to say whether or not your work met the criteria for that particular standard. So they would look at it and be like, oh yeah, that joint, it's a little starved, fail. And then you'd have to go redo the whole board. And the main reason that he was at my course was because of that it was just too much politics, because then it was like, you got to bring that lady flowers, you got to, hey, Robin, nice, you look nice. Did you lose some weight? And that it was all that she would get pissed at you because you were friends with the guy that didn't call her after their date, and then all your work is she's marking failed.
Yeah, you don't want to have one person who's likely in that job because they failed, and that's what most government bureaucrats are. They're people that failed in their respective industries, and now they have the safe space of not having to deal with an open market. And I don't want that person saying this screen is okay and this screen is not. I don't want that person who has no incentive to do it quickly saying it's going to take us 8 months to certify that this screen is this level before you can sell it. Because it'll just be back to us doing what we do, which is just importing stuff and hoping it doesn't get caught. I think regulation should exist only when there's a very, very clear, obvious, ridiculous abuse that cannot be solved any other way. And I understand entering the regulatory system when it comes to customs stealing screens and people like me getting calls saying, hey, your video showed us how to replace a fuse in our products. Delete that or
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that standards are what's required. So you can't really have certification. Certification is about did you meet a standard until you decide what the standard is. So, for example, what is the standard for repairing an iPad glass? Apple doesn't do it at all. So we're kind of on our own. And
how many pieces of dust are allowed? I think Yelp does. Honestly, I think Yelp does a great job with that.
Use this adhesive? Is there, there's absolutely no. Some people are using the vacuum sealer bag. Some people are using primer. Some people aren't. Some people are using clamping systems. There's no standard. So I think there's a standard. We really should start by trying to come up with some standards.
I think there's a standard, and it's Yelp, Facebook, and Google+. The shops that suck have 1 or 2 stars. Like, I don't mean to crap on them after they're out of business. I'm just using, it's just the only example I know off the top of my head. Google Portatronics NYC. And then Google, like our company or High Tech Electronics. You can tell very quickly without regulation who sucks. And this is one of those areas where for the more lo-fi industries, the ones that are not working on, let's say, cars or military equipment or medical stuff, where we're just working on stuff that, okay, you mess up something in a phone, it's not going to endanger somebody's life too greatly. I almost think that it's more efficient for people to just look on Yelp, Google Plus, and Facebook than it is for them to look at a licensing website. When was the last time you checked the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs to check if a business was good before checking online reviews? Just like to see if they had complaints against them.
I looked at that just one time before I looked at the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah, and
it's where they're in the same. Aren't they in the same building? Yeah, you got a guy here, Peter Wilson, that really wants you to read his comment, which he makes the point, if I had a Mustang and I took it from the U.S. to Canada and the windshield broke and I fixed it, would it then be counterfeit and confiscated when I drive back into the U.S.?
Yes, because it would no longer be a Mustang. It would be
right.
It would be a Ford Pinto.
Hood ornament there that's not a Mustang anymore. You got some other kind of glass. And then I like Shannon, who says, what if I change the tire air with non-genuine air? Where's the line? That's what I think is bothers me the most about this the response to this entire confiscation issue. So I'm getting a lot of feedback that's saying things like, well, Jessa, just have them cross out, like black out the logos, which they used to do, and I think stopped because maybe they felt this problem was going away. Or they'll say, well, Jessa, you have to write your customs declaration so that it says, so that, something broken phones or something else. Jessa, you need to get a different address. You can't have it sent to your store, you idiot. You need to get a burner address.
These people are watching The Wire.
Yeah,
they're watching
where
too
it's
much
like,
McNulty.
I am a legitimate business owner where I pay retail space rent, I pay taxes, I pay insurance, I have to pay workman's compensation, I provide jobs, I have real customers, I collect sales tax and give it to the state. This is a legitimate business. A legitimate business does not ever use the word burner address, period, in our day-to-day operations. If I'm having to get a burner address, then there's a problem in the industry. Yeah, and that's why I want to address this and have it go to court and have a judge say, no, you don't need a burner address to fix an iPhone screen.
Yeah, I'm never going to forget this one shipment I got about 4 or 5 years ago where what they did was they shipped a laptop cooler, and I thought, I got ripped off. This isn't what I ordered. What the hell? And then I look at it.
Batteries in it?
No, and the fan blades were broken, and under each of the fan blades were the parts that I ordered. So they broke the fan blades of a laptop cooler and put the parts under each one of the fan blades so that when they looked at it, it just looks like a laptop cooler. And it's like, why am I doing this? They go through less effort in The Wire to sell people heroin.
But it makes you feel like maybe the word gray market is appropriate. I don't want to even have the word gray market associated with, when I think about the little girls on the softball team wearing iPad Rehab sponsored softball team t-shirts. I don't want the word gray market and burner address to go with this legitimate business in a small town. It's just silly. I don't like posting on the community Facebook page, hey, support the right to repair. We just lost $1,700, which could have been a bonus for my team. It could have been, discounts to people in this town. But, we just threw that money away for no reason and have my town feel like, well, then I guess you were doing something wrong, because there's because this exists that we're forced to get legitimate parts for repair that are the best parts that we can get using burner addresses. That's insane.
Yeah, and somebody brought up a good point that there are no standards in this industry, versus like grade A versus grade A plus versus grade AAA plus. With LCD screens, at least with LG, there are numbers in the side of the box. If you get an LG screen box and it says 9, that's the crap pile. 5, decent. No number, better, CP. And A, which you're almost never going to find, best. And right. And I actually have 100 of them here that don't have the exact Easy ID code that Apple had on them, so now they're useless, which is about $10,000 worth of stuff that's just garbage.
That's silly.
So what I think that the enforcing standards in our own industry would be using good parts and just in our industry having some sense of pride for the fact that we use stuff that's actually good. If right. In other industries, you wouldn't be a car mechanic and say, yeah, I use these $3 brake pads because I get to make way more profit. People would think that you're a piece of crap. But in our industry, if somebody says, yeah, I order this stuff, it's really cheap, everybody's like, oh, cool. Can I learn? Can I do that? Just read.
Look
read
at
the
this stream right now. The comment from David. Blacked out logo should solve this issue. Just get a marker, retard. I don't want to have to black out pieces of a legitimate screen. This is a refurbished screen. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, like why should you have to do that? And we've had arguments about this vendor.
Goods. I don't want to have to black out the logo. No, I will not black it out. No.
And we've had arguments about this because I've actually PayPal claimed your vendor. I've left this out of the stream. I don't like your vendor. I think they suck. But they sell a lot of good stuff. They just didn't really want to RMA some of my stuff that didn't work, but that's not the experience Jess has ever had with them.
You didn't buy the ones with the logo, did you?
Yeah, my first criticism was, why doesn't this vendor use the Sharpie? Because when I had the supply company and I was selling thousands of screens back in 2011 and 12 every day, None of my stuff had that on it. They were all blacked out, not even probably with a Sharpie. They probably had a machine stamping the logo out of all that stuff because I don't want to risk getting in trouble. So I understand when people say, why didn't that idiot block out the logo? And yes, I probably an argument for another stream. I do think that seller's an idiot. But at the same time,
I don't think that you should say she's not professional because she didn't put these screens in a broken laptop.
If you're selling bags of weed, you should at least write oregano on it. You know, like, don't write weed. Just write oregano. It takes no effort. But Jess's point is, I don't think that I should have to write oregano on my bag of weed. I think it should be illegal. Which makes sense.
I don't think I should have to write oregano on my
yeah, like why should I have to cross this out to get around a law that shouldn't even be here to begin with?
Right. That makes sense. I like Sky 173. She shouldn't have to black it out. It's an original part with a new piece of glass. Yes, I think this is a new entity. This is aftermarket remanufactured original LCD. That's what it is. Aftermarket remanufactured original LCD. That's a new entity. It has a logo put there by Apple that does not make a remanufactured aftermarket original LCD become an Apple part. They do not make this part. This is new and therefore not subject to being counterfeit.
Let's see. It says, never buy the $3 brake pads. Shady shops will use them, though.
Is it Chinese oregano?
I wonder if politicians realize they're cutting the tax base by cutting the moms and pops and dealer stores from repairs. Yeah, because we actually pay taxes, unlike the fruity company.
I like Karatan's suggestion. I think this is constructive. They should put their own logo over the Apple logo to know it's a refurb. That's not a bad suggestion. You know, it feels a lot better than blacking it out, but, you know, over top of the Apple logo. I mean, it's tough because it's, you know, like a stamp and it would be kind of hard. I mean, they do put their own logo on these sometimes through a sticker that's, you know, kind of goes down here. This is skinny and it's a flex and it's kind of delicate, but I like that idea that you just kind of put a big R on top of it. So then it's clear, you know, like let's just solve the underlying problem. It's clear this is refurbed if you've got a big R on it.
Do you think there's anything that we've missed?
No, I like that we talked about how this is not just me. So I kind of listed some of the repair fan posts, you know, where we easily tallied up well over $100,000 of goods that were just thrown away for no reason from other people. It's not just Apple either. It's Samsung's as well. We talked about how it is not cool to kind of be made to feel that this is some sort of a, you know, in industry where you're a legitimate business paying taxes, but required to have things shipped to a burner address in order to provide the best top quality parts that you can. And we talked about right to repair and how, you know, we kind of really need to educate consumers about, hey, there's lots of different types of screens that are out there, and your lawmakers, hey, there's lots of different types of screens out there, and this is what it takes to get the best screens. Anybody can get the crappy screens, and if you want the best screens out there for your phone, then help us make it more legitimate. I'll share you a little piece of good news though, Louis. I heard through the grapevine, I got a lot of ears on my grapevine, so I'll tell you that I heard this rumor, total rumor, from somebody out in the world that works at an Apple store who said that always in the past, a screen at the Apple store in the back room would come in a white box, just a plain white box, because it was never going to be seen by the public or anybody else. So straight up plain old white box. And that lately they have noticed that the screens are coming in a white box with some labeling and a barcode, as if they are preparing for something like right to repair to pass, in which case they would need to have an engine in place to distribute those screens and actually sell them. So that to me, I thought was good news, and hopefully kind of a sign of, you know, them sort of making a plan B, and maybe right to repair will pass and I won't have to get a burner address.
Someone said, I think that you would have Trump support if you could showcase that you could refurbish screens in the U.S. Yeah, but Trump couldn't even get rid of Obamacare or DACA, so.
I'm not going to even say the word Trump.
Yeah.
Gotta drink some Diet Coke. Watch it.
Totally unrelated. Hypothetically speaking, if there were one of the largest Apple stores in Manhattan that happened to have a piece of free real estate right across the street from it, do you think I should try to rent it? And if so, how much effort should I put into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course you should. And
Why?
I mean, I'm never going to tell it. I'm not going to be the voice of caution. You got to find somebody else for that because, I mean, for a lot of your crazy ideas, I will be like, nah, no. This one though would be so cool.
I know. I want to do it. I called the realtor already.
You did?
Yeah.
What did they say? When are you
going to
go
have a
see?
store? I want to open another one.
When are you going to go
Let
see
me
it?
in. ASAP. I'm going to be. I'm going to
Today?
be. No, not today. It's not business day. But it's right across the street on 14th Street and 9th Avenue. It's right in the corner. It's perfect. I don't know what sign I would want to get, but there'd have to be some sort of sign that trolls.
So much fun. I mean,
everything in the window. Just imagine the window art. Imagine the T-shirts that we would sell. It could just be a tourist attraction.
God. Yeah, I mean, I would love to just come bring a station right in the window and to just, like I told you, I wanted to. I wanted so badly when we were friends with Sam from Solaris, who had a kiosk right in front of the Apple store. And we wanted to just go over there one day and just sit there fixing Touch IC right in front of the Apple store. Never got around to it. And that's one of the things I really regret not doing. So I would love to just sit there with, while 7 plus audio IC is a huge thing. Just sit there doing audio IC jobs going, you know, like a big sign that says something like, you know, long boot loop or, you know, people say they can't hear you, 7 plus. They tell you that's not repairable. You know, now that these things are out of warranty, fix it for you right here. That'd be so fun.
It's hard for me to resist this idea. And I've always said that I'm not going to.
You'd be like the MacBook Nazi, like the soup Nazi, you know. You should make a sign that says something like "No MacBook for you" with you in the like soup Nazi outfit. So many.
I would want to get some good artwork. I would think that I would have. I want it to be a tourist attraction. So what I would do is I would have pictures.
You would sell like your little sheepies.
Yeah, no. What I would do is I would have to make a booklet of every single failure. I have to publish the book before I open the store.
Coffee table book idea.
Yeah, the coffee table book. I'd have to sell the coffee table book at the store. I would have to have T-shirts like with the M1. What the M1 jumper looks like messed up. You'd have to send me a picture of that so I could put it on a T-shirt and sell it. I'd have to have a fried GPU. I would have to have all the flaws in all their products over the past 10 years showcased on the wall. It would have to be like a little bit of a museum, a little bit of an exhibit, and a little bit of a repair shop. People
really like, you know, one of those classic Lewis pictures of you with a middle finger, you know.
But I would need a lot of help.
Lewis. Your whole section that's like the vintage Lewis that's still cursed all the time. You know, where he'd be, you know, like a big picture over there. Oh, like one of the like movie pictures with the Lewis going like this, and you could like pose next to him and get your picture taken. He's so great. So many great ideas. It'd be so fun.
Yeah, I think it would take a lot of work, but I would. It's not even the financial part. That's a big part of it because they probably want $20,000 a month for that space. So I'm gonna have to convince them to split it, or $30,000 or something. I need all the artwork done. I would need somebody to design a perfect anti-Apple repair shop to be across the street from it, and I'm not artistic at all. But I would happily crowdsource the artistic work that would go into a perfect storefront to be right across the street from Apple. And there's also the funding. The donation thing. If somebody manages to like fix a $1,000 device because of my stuff and they want to donate $1, fine. I've never really wanted to have a Patreon. The idea of having a recurring fund or something has always without doing anything always kind of seemed douchey. But this is one of those areas where I really think I would actually be totally okay with a GoFundMe or a Patreon to be able to open a store right across the street from Apple. But I have to figure out what it costs.
Turtleneck sweaters. Ha ha ha.
But that would be so much fun. That would be like, what if the sign was just a middle finger pointed across the street? Oh my God, that would be hilarious. God, just nothing but a giant middle finger. That would be a sheep with a middle finger. So hilarious. It could be what if I had a projector? What if I had a projector in the window that just shot onto the store.
Like a hologram.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh my God. Who is in your life that's gonna tell you no?
That's the thing. I don't have anybody in my, like, Emma's supposed to tell me no, and she said, yeah, go for it. I'm like, no, I need a voice of reason to tell me, do not risk your life savings to pay a ridiculous amount of rent to open up a store across the street from Apple. Just as
What
a
about
nephew.
Steve? He's not a risk taker. Did he say no?
No, not even him. I messaged him last night because I messaged him at like 1 a.m. saying, what do you think of this? And he's the one that never wants to take risks on any of these new crazy ideas. And his message was, let's give it to Apple.
Oh my God.
I don't have anybody in my life that's going to tell me this is a bad thing to do.
What did Oreo say? Maybe Oreo?
My cat went, wow. I get it.
Yeah. How about a picture of Lewis behind a partially broken screen fixing the crack with his middle finger?
Oh, for the people who are asking, what does this mean? Look at my Instagram. I posted a picture of the storefront. I posted a picture of a couple of them. The first one that I posted to Instagram is literally right across the street from Apple.
Oh my God. I was thinking about this logo the other day when I saw this piece of artwork in Apple with a bite out of it. Just like the logo of, or just the artwork of an apple with like the bite piece put back in, kind of like repaired. So it's back to the shape of an apple. I like that.
Or like the sheep biting the apple or something, but there would have to be, it can't be like this shithole. No offense to my current store, but my current store looks like a shithole. Like it's undeniable, but this store couldn't look like a shithole. It would have to be the aesthetic peak of perfection. This moment you walk in, there has to be a repair vibe, but also a vibe that you got. I know you got fucked. We know you got fucked. Other people got fucked. We're here to support you. You're not alone.
It's just a huge sign that says "Not Apple Authorized."
Yeah.
And then a middle finger.
Yeah.
So great. All right. It is time to be done. It's Mother's Day, and I gotta
Happy Mother's Day, Jessa.
Thank you.
I am gonna just in honor of Mother's Day. I'm gonna put all these donations towards myself and buying myself a burrito and maybe taking a limo home.
Towards your signage for your store. You're gonna have a big graphic art spill. You need to start a little graphics art fund.
And a security deposit fund. So like $20,000 rent, they're gonna probably want $60,000 or $80,000 as a security deposit. I could do that. It's just the rent onwards for a year.
Twirla patches. Can you pay them in twirla patches?
I'll know in a few months. Depends on what your friend says. Isn't she on the FDA advisory board for that?
No, we're not doing that.
I'm not going to get you in trouble. All right. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you next time.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Oh, man. Client takes a picture crossing the street. Client takes a picture crossing the street, gets 5% off. That would be great. I would love that. That would be so cool. Oh, man. That would be beautiful. Yeah, you have no idea how excited I am about this. I want that space. I want that space. I want that space. That's going to be mine. That is... the thing is, I could afford the rent for a year without making any money off of that space. And I could afford the security deposit to that space. The question is, after the security deposit and rent for a year without making money, can I afford the construction and renovation that would go into it and the insanity? That is... Yeah. That is... $30K a month by a building. Yeah, in New York, no. This dump building that I'm in sold for $14 million. This shithole of a fucking shithole sold for this crap fest, this pile of garbage. This building sold for $14 million, to give you an idea of what New York pricing is like. But yeah, I'm thinking it would be really cool to make something that even goes beyond a repair shop. It would be the home of independent repair, so that once we win and this bill is passed and customs isn't seizing our shit anymore, this could just be a tourist attraction. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it would be really cool to have a tourist attraction for this is where the battle of repair took place and was won. That would be something that's really cool. And $30K a month is insanity rent. For that area, it's not that crazy though. But it would be awesome. It would be awesome. I could die the day after renting that store and setting it up happy, just knowing that I... See, what do we have here? It is time for me to get out of here. I'm hungry. Hope you enjoyed the sweet, sweet Amazon Amscope referral money, but I love my microscope. Thank you. By the way, if you click those links below to buy something, I just want to say thank you very much for clicking our affiliate links. Happy Mother's Day, Jessa. Indeed. Stallman's phone repair. Yes. Let's see. You have to crowdfund that. The rent is crazy. Girlfriend says absolutely do not use your own money. Well, girlfriend said do not use your own money, which means that you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to wait, no, you're right. Yeah, I really should not use my own money for that. I should use some of my own money and some of the money that I get from a Patreon. I don't know. I've always felt really nasty about the Patreon thing, but this would absolutely be worth the Patreon for. That would be worth a GoFundMe or a Patreon. To open a Rossmann repair right across the street from a prominent Apple store in a major metropolitan area. Can you talk about the 2017 Touch Bar MacBook Pro popping noise? I don't know if you're talking about opening and closing popping noise or keyboard noise. The keyboards, there is a law firm that's going after them. I think it's Gibbs Gerard or Gerard Gibbs, something like that. And they're going after Apple, saying that the keyboards die prematurely and that they're going for a class action lawsuit to either get money back to the individuals or a repair program going. I'm really hoping that ends in a repair program, and the reason for that is that class action lawsuits are useless. Like many of you, I have $1 or $2 or 5 cent checks in my apartment that I've never bothered to deposit because the amount of time it takes me to unlock my phone is not worth the 5 cents I would get from the damn check. Class action lawsuits make lawyers rich and nobody else. However, if this class action lawsuit results in a repair program for that defective part so that Apple is forced to actually support the customers that decided to spend a $1,000 premium to buy their products, I'm all for it. And by the way, as always, who said it here first? Remember that? Remember that article? Remember that article that Gizmodo did saying that this is the dumbest complaint about the MacBook Pro? Let's look that up. Let's look that up, mofo. Because somebody, I still remember that. Gizmodo. This was some bullshit. And I just want to say a big fuck you to the person that made this up here. Because I was right. As usual, I called it. I called it, I so called it, and I called it before everybody else called it. And do I get credit? No! I don't get credit. I get bitching. Look at this. Look at this BS. Bullshit-ass article. This is the dumbest MacBook Pro complaint by Christina Warren. Yeah. Guess what? Class action, mofo! I was right. I called it. That keyboard sucks balls. And Apple probably knew about it. Because it sucked in the 2015 MacBook, and they used the same damn keyboard that was in the 2015 MacBook and the 2016 MacBook. Why you do that? Why? What's the point of that? What's the point of that? And then you're going to insult me for saying that I'm complaining about it? I'm sorry. Hey, maybe I'm sorry for complaining about the one thing that I knew would likely cause failures and irritation for people years down the line based on 10 years of experience repairing these products. But hey, what do I know? You write for Gizmodo. What a bunch of shit. Never read Gizmodo, never trust Gizmodo. Thank you to Breakfast at McD. And fuck Gizmodo. And I just the fact that I went to their site instead of going to archive.org makes me feel dirty. But yeah, I do think that they are going to get in some serious shit for that. And hey, it's on them. You know, you decided to rivet the keyboard into that machine. You could have made it an easy to replace keyboard, but no, you couldn't. You had to make it a keyboard that was riveted in. If this was a keyboard that was not riveted into the computer, this would not be such a fundamental pain point for Apple. But because they decided to rivet the keyboard into the casing, now you're fucked. Because if you want to replace that keyboard for the customer, you got to replace the whole top case. It's going to cost Apple more money because they made that decision. Doesn't. And the thing is, users would be a lot of users, if you said, here, we're just going to mail you a keyboard. It's this easy to take out, replace it yourself. Maybe they put up with it. But this, yeah, that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow. If you crowdfund it, that will show people want independent repair. Interesting. What is your favorite Apple product? I don't have Apple products. Don't feel like donating money is a shame at all. If a filthy anime YouTuber deserves Patreon, you do too. Well, God bless you. Didn't Gizmodo buy a stolen iPhone? Fuck Gizmodo. Gizmodo are a bunch of bloggers, not journalists. Yeah. Yeah. Apple needs to hire you as a design consultant. They have people that are smarter than me that work there. I know that with their amount of money, Apple has a lot of people there that are much smarter than me. It's something about their company culture where they're not listening to the smart people. Because I'm not smart enough to work there. If you have $400 billion, trust me, you can afford to hire much better people than me. People that actually passed calculus and chemistry in college. If you rent the space for $30K a month and set up shop, Apple will buy you out. It's win-win. It's not about the money, man. It's not about the money. I wouldn't get bought out. Let's crowdfund the store, everybody says. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Damn straight. I'm going to do it. And if I have to do it with my own money because crowdfunding doesn't work, then so be it. I don't care what my girlfriend says. I'm going to get in trouble for that later. I'm going to do it. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. And thank you very much to Jessa for showing up on this interview at Mother's Day. That was a very kind thing, and I really do appreciate the time.